Well, happy Friday, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for April 28th, 2023. Every week, we take a look at some of the headlines from across our state and see what's going on. So grab yourself a cup of coffee. Let's start with some news stories related to the state legislature. One of my favorite subjects, as you may know, but also it's important because we're getting towards the end of the legislative session. We only have about a week and a half left or so. So we're going to get in the finish line, see what bills are going to pass, what bills are going to fail. One of the most contentious bills this year has to do with housing, where Jared Polis is trying to force high density housing into local communities that don't necessarily want it. So, first article, the DenverGazette.com from Marion Goodland, April 26, 2023, updated 7 hours ago. Polis's housing bill advances after panel strips key upzoning provision. The Senate Appropriations Committee on a party line approved an amendment watering down Governor Jared Polis's signature affordable housing bill before advancing it out of the panel that brought a halt to its progress. The Wednesday vote came after a vigorous hour of debate among committee members over a competing amendment in an effort to return it to a lower committee. Both Republican efforts failed on party line votes. The hearing on Senate Bill 213 was delayed several times while bill sponsor, Senate Majority Leader Dominic Moreno, Democrat from Commerce City, tried to broker a compromise between the governor's office and Senate Democrats. Among the key opponents in the Senate's Majority Caucus were the Appropriation Panel's chair and vice chair, both who pledged to vote against the bill if it continued to strip local government authority on zoning. The winning amendment was a strike blow that rewrote the bill and took out its most controversial provision, language that sought to allow state control of local government zoning decisions. The bill in its new form would signal a major defeat for Polis, who made state preemption a key feature of his affordable housing plan for the 2023 session. As amended, Senate Bill 2213 is little more than a planning measure and still lacks any requirement that new housing be affordable. Its most important provision now appears to be a housing needs assessment that will look at housing needs on a statewide, rural, and urban basis. The assessment has bipartisan support. But the bill still lacks full support from its most ardent opponents, including Colorado Municipal League. Kevin Bommer, the association's president, told Colorado Politics Tuesday he's waiting for confirmation the governor and the bill's House sponsors are on board with the amendment and with other changes sought by CML. Should that happen, Bommer has pledged to change from opposition to support. Wow. So this is great news. I mean, Senate Bill 213 was doomed from the beginning, thankfully, because of the major outcry from local community leaders across the state. I mean, Polis really tried to do a power grab here. I mean, this guy calls himself a libertarian, but it couldn't be further from the truth when it comes to Senate Bill 213. This bill would have taken away the authority from local communities to decide their own housing needs and their own development plans and replace it with a state committee or state function to decide what kind of housing is going to be allowed in certain communities across the state. I mean, absolutely ridiculous, total power grab. Good to see it fail, and a major pie in the face for Polis. So let's keep going with the state legislature, see what else is happening this week. ColoradoSun.com. Jesse Paul, April 26th, 2023. Colorado cities still won't be allowed to authorize overdose prevention centers after legislature rejects bill. So some good news there for people who are opposing having overdose prevention centers, aka legalized drug injection sites in their local communities. Colorado cities won't be allowed to authorize the formation of centers where people could openly use illicit drugs under the supervision of healthcare workers or others trained in reversing overdoses after a state Senate committee Wednesday voted down a bill that would have provided a legal pathway for the sites. House Bill 1202 was rejected by the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, with 6 of the 9 members of the panel voting to shelve the measure. Democratic Senators Kyle Mullick of Thornton and Joanne Ganal of Fort Collins indicated last week that would vote with the panel's 3 Republicans in voting down the measure, and they did just that on Wednesday. Senator Lisa Cutter, Democrat from Jefferson County, also voted down the bill, though she said she was doing so reluctantly and only because it was clear the measure had no path forward. Wow, the bill's failure comes amid a string of defeats at the Colorado Capitol over the past week for progressive Democrats. So very interesting. I mean, really good to hear for a lot of local communities. There's a lot of concern that by allowing legalized injection sites, you'd be inviting, heroin use, potential fentanyl use, and other problems into local communities. Now, it's still happening, don't get me wrong, but it's interesting to see this debate play out in our state legislature and across communities in Colorado. So, pretty interesting news story. People are comparing Colorado these days to Portland or Minneapolis, and this is one way not to become Portland or Minneapolis is not to go overboard on overdose prevention centers. All right, let's take a look at the next headline here. Sticking with the state legislature, some more good news. A rent control bill fails in committee. April 25th, 2023. A bill that would have repealed Colorado's ban on rent control has died in committee. House Bill 1115 was heard Tuesday evening in the Senate Local Government and Housing Committee. Lawmakers killed the bill in a 4-3 vote. The bill would have allowed local governments to enact rent control policies. Rent control is prohibited under state law, and the proposal would have lifted the ban. So, Javier Marbury, who's one of the Democratic Socialists of America candidates, an avowed card carrying socialist, proud socialist, sponsored the bill, of course, because he thinks that the government should be able to come in and control housing at a big level, kind of in line with what the governor was trying to do in a way. So, pretty good news there that this rent control bill failed in committee. So, a lot of people are very pessimistic these days about Colorado's political situation, but there's some reasons to be hopeful. Not all of the, as bad as the Democrats are, not all of them are totally Looney Tunes. There is a little bit of a divide between the far left progressive caucus and the more moderate, Chamber of Commerce style Democrats in the legislature. So interesting to see that play out in years to come. But it also does provide an opportunity for Republicans, unaffiliateds, libertarians, even possibly to come in there and kind of wedge between all these different caucuses and different groups fighting it out. So let's move on here to the Great Complete Colorado, page 2, one of the best original reporting websites we have in Colorado. Awesome article from Sherry Pife. Emails show coordination between state healthcare agency and activists pushing hospital-related bills. This is from April 27th, 2023. An open records request by Complete Colorado on the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, HCPF, shows coordination between the department and progressive activists, who in turn have connections to legislators carrying bills this session that could change the way healthcare works in Colorado. In March, Complete Colorado filed open record requests on HCPF, asking for emails or other correspondence to or from several employees of HCPF in relation to 3 hospital-related bills in the Colorado House of Representatives this session. The first is House Bill 1215, which would put limits on what hospitals could charge for facility fees. Interesting there. It did pass. Another bill, 1243, concerns changes to what is known as the hospital community benefit by imposing requirements that increase the amount of net revenue spent by hospitals on community benefits. Gosh. The final bill, 1226, may be the most telling in so much as who is behind all the proposed changes that could push Colorado healthcare one step closer to a government-managed system. The bill, which concerns hospital transparency and reporting requirements, opens up the finances of hospitals and state officials. It is being sponsored in the House by Democrat Kista Gray Kennedy and Republican Matt Soper, in the Senate by Democrat Dylan Roberts and Republican Perry Will. It has passed the House and is assigned to the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. No date has been set as of this publication. So very interesting. The transparency aspect being pushed in HB 1226 is ironic in that DeGray Kennedy's wife is one of the main activists coordinating with HCPF on at least one of the other 2 hospital bills, according to the many emails obtained by Complete Colorado. So very interesting there. On January 31st, Kyra DeGray Kennedy emailed a group of officials in the governor's office and HCPF with a list of action items. The governor's team will determine if requiring a tax estimate from the state auditor will result in a fiscal note, Kira wrote. The HCPF team is exploring ways to financially penalize hospitals for the amount of their tax exemption if a hospital system is out of compliance, and will bring that mechanism and estimated amount to our next meeting. Wow, so these people are left-wing activists, these young invincible types. Read this article, really get a behind-the-scenes look at what's happening here in Colorado politics, in as much as the power that nonprofits or political groups have, how they use their power to work with legislators and apparently other agencies here to push an agenda. I mean, it's healthcare is already a big problem, a huge issue. The idea that having the state have more control over our healthcare is absolutely frightening, would only increase costs, reduce the amount of care. So check out this great article. Complete Colorado has some really great original reporting. You really want to check this one out. Checking out the next subject I want to talk about today is the Great Denver Liberty on the Rocks, Denver's premier liberty meetup, a wonderful place where you can go meet like-minded individuals if you believe in freedom and liberty and always learn something because they always have a speaker come by and give an interesting talk. So this week, coming up on Wednesday, March 3rd, 2023, 6 p.m., is when the doors open at the Independence Institute down in downtown Denver, just miles from the state capitol. Ranching in the Beef Initiative with Jason Rich. So it sounds like a great topic, something you definitely want to check out. With recent food shortages and the egg crisis, finding alternatives to the mainstream food supply is more important than ever. Despite what you may hear in the news, beef happens to be one of the most sustainable, nutritious, and reliable source of food. Jason Rich is a local rancher and Bitcoin advocate. Jason raises high-quality grass-fed, grass-finished, and regenerative beef here in Colorado. In addition to his great work ranching, he's also a Bitcoin educator, traveling all over the state evangelizing for high quality food and high quality money. We'll be meeting at the Independence Institute, not at Choppers where they used to meet. Doors open at 6, talk starts at 7, drinks will be provided. Anyone is welcome to bring their own food or food to share. So definitely check it out. Independence Institute is great for allowing their venue to be used for Liberty on the Rocks. Really fun place to meet like-minded individuals. Sounds like a very interesting talk coming up here on May 3rd. Moving on, of course, what we've been seeing in Colorado and across the country is a lot of tragedy happening at schools. Of course, schools are mostly defenseless against evildoers, but that's looking to change here in Longmont. Longmont's Twin Peaks Classical Academy to allow armed employees. Only non-classroom teacher will have the option. So April 21st, 2023, Amy Bounds at the timescall.com, also connected to the Boulder Daily Camera. Longmont's Twin Peaks Classical Academy is planning to become the first public school in their area to allow employees, excluding classroom teachers, to carry guns as well as to hire at least one armed security guard through a private company. No other schools in the St. Vrain Valley or Boulder Valley school districts have taken either step. The board at Twin Peaks, PK through 12 charter school authorized by St. Vrain Valley, voted to allow employees to be armed at a meeting earlier this month. I've been discussing it for a couple of years with the school leadership team. Twin Peaks Executive Director Joe Melching said, "Every event that occurs that has triggered us to re-examine what we do. This hurts my heart that we're at this point, but we've got to do this." Not a bad idea, really. And the entirely a board decision. So that's very good to see that this school is looking to have some prevention to keep their students safe. Laura Carno, executive director of Faster Colorado, said her organization has trained employees at schools in 41 Colorado school districts so far and expects to add another 10 to 15 schools by the end of the year. The program is taught by active duty law enforcement instructors with SWAT team experience and held at law enforcement training facilities. She said, "We're training them in two things, stopping the killer and stopping the bleeding," she said. "It's about who is going to save the children between when it starts and when law enforcement gets there. It is just for that gap." So really wonderful to see that these schools are stepping up and putting a plan together to keep their students safe. Let's hope this is a trend that continues, and let's hope that any future violence is prevented by these measures. Moving on to a relatively sad story of the week. Denver 7, Bandimere Speedway closing at end of 2023 season, owners searching for a new location. So as you may know, Bandimere Speedway, located in Jefferson County, took a strong stance during the COVID lockdowns. They defied both the Jefferson County Board of Health as well as Governor Polis by hosting a rally, by keeping things open as much as they could, and really pushing back against the authoritarian COVID policies that we saw back in 2020. So ashamed to see that they're leaving. Article here is from April 22nd, 2023, updated. First posted April 21st, Stephanie Butzer, denver7.com. Jefferson County, Colorado. After 65 years of drag racing in Morrison, Bandimere Speedway will close at the end of 2023 season as the owners look for a new location. John C. Bandimere Jr., Chief Spiritual Officer and second-generation owner at the Speedway, announced Friday morning that the conclusion of the 2023 racing season in October will mark the end of drag racing along South Rooney Road in Morrison. Over the past few decades, it developed a loving nickname, Thunder Mountain. As we close the chapter on this part of the story, our family is taking time to reflect on hundreds and maybe thousands of memories we've experienced on Thunder Mountain. And trust me, there have been some great memories. Memories including many of the irreplaceable pieces over the years that have added to the unique fabric of Bandimere Speedway, he said. The relationships that have been created with employees, racers, sponsors, sanctioning bodies, guests, service providers, and more remind us daily what a privilege it's been for our family to continue the legacies started by my parents in 1958. Bandimere said his family knows the continued growth in the area could impact Bandimere Speedway. That included the Red Rocks Ranch neighborhood across C-470 from the track. Home builder Leonard said in 2020 that it planned to put up 1,200 homes across 310 acres there. The Bandimere Speedway family decided to be proactive by trying to find another possible location. So wishing them the best. Hope Bandimere Speedway can find a place. They are a great family who stood up for Colorado's racing community and also against the authoritarianness of these health lockdowns, in quote unquote health lockdowns in 2020. So Godspeed, Bandimere Speedway. Hope you find a new location. Moving on to ColoradoPolitics.com. A Denver Gazette editorial board, April 24th, 2023. A scapegoat for Colorado car theft? While a proposed crackdown on rampant auto theft appears to have stalled in Colorado's legislature, our state's attorney general has decided to go after automakers instead. If it's too much trouble to catch the culprit, blame the victim. On Friday, Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser announced he is joining 17 attorneys general from his party and other states in requesting a federal recall of Hyundai and Kia automobiles. Oh gosh. Weiser isn't alleging the popular brands have faulty airbags or brakes or emission systems. Rather, a news release from his office cites the company's continued failure to take adequate steps to address the alarming rate of theft of their vehicles. Wow. Absolutely ridiculous. Just because these vehicles are easy to steal, it somehow is the fault of the automakers. I mean, come on. This is totally and utterly ridiculous. Weiser, as well as these other attorney generals across the state, are totally trying to scapegoat these these car companies. I mean, come on. Just because somebody figured out how to steal them, it's not the car company's fault. Absolute ridiculousness from an attorney general who is doing very little to help keep Colorado's crime rate down. Let's move on. The GreeleyTribune.com. Colorado man who sued Kyle Clark over January 6 coverage settles defamation lawsuit. Chad Burmeister's case had been set for argument before Colorado Court of Appeals on Tuesday. So, of course, no friend of Kyle Clark here. The guy is a left-wing authoritarian who's mostly a shill for the Democratic Party politics, in my opinion. But it's interesting to see him being held accountable for his inflammatory remarks, totally defaming, apparently, Chad Burmeister. So this article is from April 25th, 2023, Shelley Bradbury at the Denver Post. A Colorado man who marched to the U.S. Capitol on January 6 and then sued 9 News' Kyle Clark for defamation over subsequent news coverage settled the lawsuit days before the case had been set to be argued before the Colorado Court of Appeals, according to court records. Chad Burmeister, a Colorado businessman, traveled to Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021, and posted publicly on his Facebook page about participating in the march to the U.S. Capitol building, according to court filings. The next day, Kyle Clark featured the Littleton man on his 9 News newscast, using Burmeister's own social media post to cast doubt on a state lawmaker's claim that the January 6th attack on the Capitol was not carried out by Trump supporters. The segment included comments from Burmeister that he did not go inside the building and did not believe he broke any laws. Burmeister sued in November 2021 over the short segment, alleging that Clark's coverage falsely painted him as someone who participated in violence or vandalism during the march to the Capitol. Burmeister said he never went inside the building and was not violent during the event. In his lawsuit, he said he suffered damage to his reputation and his business, ScaleX.ai, because of the 9 News segment. So pretty interesting to see some accountability on Kyle Clark, and 9 News for a long time has been has been pretty hostile towards anybody who defies the government's narrative on most policies. So very interesting to see this accountability, and hopefully Kyle Clark learns his lesson. Let's move on. Complete Colorado, page 2, another great article here from Lauren Bishop, April 24th, 2023. The legislature paying off special interests with taxpayer refund dollars. Big shocker there, politicians doing bad things. With the public distracted by gun control, abortion, and other hot button issues, the Democrat controlled Colorado legislature is quietly advancing nearly 24 bills to redistribute your taxpayer refund to special interests. The Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, or TABOR, in Colorado's Constitution requires the state to refund excess tax revenue back to taxpayers. The state cannot spend this surplus revenue without asking voters at the ballot. But there's a loophole. If legislators give your refund to someone else as a special tax benefit, it is not considered spending. It is considered a tax revenue reduction, so they can do it without asking you. Anytime certain people get a special tax break, that reduces total state revenues. If revenues go down, the surplus goes up. If the surplus goes down, your refund goes down. That's how legislators are stealing from all taxpayers to give to a few politically favored interests. And they've been doing it for years, but never on the scale being proposed by Democrats this year. So, an absolutely great article. You got to read this, check it out, see how these politicians are skirting the system, skirting our taxpayer Bill of Rights to take our tax refund money that rightfully belongs to us, was stolen from us, and give it to special interest groups who I can only imagine are connected to them politically or support their agenda. So, moving on. Speaking of a tax loophole or a TABOR loophole that legislators have been using for years to steal our money without raising taxes, is delivery fees. So, delivery fees are the newest way for states to raise your taxes. This is from realclearmarkets.com, Andrew Wilford, from April 26th, 2023. Since 2018, states have been able to assess sales tax collection obligations on online businesses, even if they have no physical presence in the state. That's caused a whole host of problems for smaller businesses that lack the accounting tools to manage their sales tax collection obligations in 45 states across the country, not to mention local jurisdictions. But even as reform is desperately needed in that space to forestall a rash of small business closures over tax compliance obligations their owners were unaware of or simply couldn't keep track of, some states are exploring ways to make the problem even worse. Proposals to impose delivery fees on transactions that involve a delivery to a customer in state are gaining traction in states across the country. While often framed as climate friendly, these fees are in truth just another excuse to tax what is perceived as a productive and growing industry, with little regard for the difficulties created for businesses that have to figure out how to comply. Ironically, the first state to pass into law a delivery fee, quote unquote, Colorado, was trying to solve a very Colorado specific problem. Colorado's Taxpayer Bill of Rights requires that any tax increases be approved by voters via referendum. To avoid this inconvenient requirement for taxpayer feedback, Colorado's legislature routinely labels tax increases as fees that do not require voter approval. Should be illegal. These politicians should be held accountable for violating our state constitution, skirting around it in order to keep more of our money. One such fee, enacted in the summer of 2021, imposed a 27-cent delivery fee on each delivery transaction in the state. The fee was administered the exact same way as a sales tax, collected at the same time and with the same exemptions applying to it. Sellers were required to list the delivery fee as a separate line item on invoices. While 27 cents doesn't sound like a lot of money, the flat rate applied to even the smallest transactions. What's more, it had all kinds of wonky consequences for sellers. So, pretty rough stuff. Sad to think that Colorado politicians are so intent on violating our rights and stealing our money that they're willing to call or call taxes fees when in reality they are taxes. I mean, come on, how ridiculous can you be? But thought this was interesting. Unfortunately, this is what's happening in Colorado as these delivery fees, hospital provider fees, hospital bed fees, whatever you want to call them, they're actually taxes. And until these politicians are held accountable for raising our taxes against the state constitution, it's going to continue on, unfortunately. So another reason to get involved in local politics. Let's move on. Denverite.com, April 26, 2023. We still have a lot of work. Mayor Michael Hancock's report shows crime has fallen downtown, but it's up across the city. Violent crime is down 15% in the central business district. However, it's up nearly 11% citywide. Wow. Sad stuff. Kyle Harris is the author. Mayor Michael Hancock's administration has faced a spike in crime during his last term. On Tuesday morning, he and members of his administration and other agencies gathered to report on their efforts to make the city safer. The numbers the administration presented as evidence show that while progress has been made downtown, crime overall is up across the city. Auto theft reports have dropped 27% since 2022. In the central business district, violent crime is down 15%, and property crime has dropped 35%. Between January 1st and April 15th, 600 illegal guns have been taken off the street. Thanks in part to this multi-agency partner effort, we're seeing a welcome decrease in certain crime rates across Denver. By no means, and I want to make this very clear, are we satisfied, Hancock said. We still have a lot of work to do, a long way to go. So violent crime is up almost 11%, with murders are up 11.54%, aggravated assault up 17.24%. The only violent crime category to drop is sexual assault with a 9.49% decrease. Property crimes are up 2.76%, with auto thefts up 6.4%. Happily, arson has dropped 21.74%. Other crimes, including public disorder, drug and alcohol crimes, are up just over 16%, with drug and alcohol crimes up a whopping 31.53%. White-collar crime has fallen 15.5%. And total crime is up 8.37%. I mean, look at that. Drug and alcohol crimes up 31%. It's a sad state for Denver. Denver is becoming increasingly dangerous, and it's very unfortunate to see that actually crime is increasing in some parts of the city, and these politicians don't have a lot of great solutions. So, Michael Hancock knows there's a problem. The Denver government knows there's a problem with the crime going on, but what is Michael Hancock doing with his last time in his office as mayor? Let's take a look at the next article. Axios Denver, 23 hours ago. Elena Alvarez. Denver mayor's international travel costs rack up in third term. So as we just saw, crime is out of control. A lot of big problems happening in Denver. Drug and alcohol crimes up 31%. And of course, the mayor is making use of his taxpayer-funded travel expenses here in his last term. Denver Mayor Michael Hancock's third-term international travel. Australia, New Zealand in October 2019, Europe in October 2022, Africa in January of this year, 2023, and Japan, March 2023, just got back from Japan at a cost of $51,000 for the taxpayers. So as the article says here, Denver Mayor Michael Hancock's passport is filling up fast. The termed out leader has been spending his last months in office traveling the world before his 12-year run wraps up this summer. Taxpayers are fronting much of the lame duck mayor's excursions. Late last month, Hancock and his delegation returned home from Japan in the name of attracting economic development to Denver, his third overseas trip in roughly the past 6 months. Wow. While globetrotting, the mayor has mostly flown business class and stayed in several five-star hotels, including the Nile Ritz-Carlton in Cairo, the Sofitel in Auckland in New Zealand, and the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, Axios Denver has learned. Unbelievable. In his third term alone, which kicked off in 2019, Hancock and his delegation have spent more than $424,000 on 4 international trips, an Axios Denver analysis found. So, crime, problems, the Denver mayor is deciding to go to New Zealand, Japan, Africa, etc. I mean, pretty sad state of affairs there. Let's hope the next Denver mayor learns from these mistakes and chooses not to waste taxpayer money traveling around the world. Last article I want to talk about this week, one of the most important ones, of course, as we saw with Liberty on the Rocks this week, going to be talking about beef initiative. Another great way to connect with local food producers is through farmer markets. So check this out, a nice little guide here, your complete guide to Denver area farmer markets in 2023. From Boulder to Castle Rock, Evergreen to Aurora, here's where to get your fresh food. So it's from the Denver Post on April 27th, 2023, Linnea Covington. Spring has sprung, which means we can start shopping at locals farmers markets again. There are so many new things going on at the market this year, and we are excited about welcoming some new to farming and new to us producers, said Boulder County Farmers Market Executive Director Mackenzie Selke. Some highlights, she said, include handmade cheeses by Colorado Farmhouse Cheese, Black Cat Farms launching a stand in the Longmont Market, unique hard ciders by Huckland Family Cider, and grass-fed beef by Grandma Grass and Livestock, which utilizes public lands in Boulder to feed the cows. So pretty cool. A lot of great farmers markets going on. Wonderful way to connect with local food producers, eat fresh and support our local agricultural community. So this article, this guide here you'll find at the website lists a pretty good amount of farmers markets across the state, but definitely something to get involved in, meet your neighbors, and shop for some local food. Well, I hope you have a great weekend, Colorado. Hope you get out there and enjoy this beautiful weather. We'll see if this rain stops, and I hope you have a great time, but we'll see you next week. Again, this is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com signing off for your weekly roundup on April 28th, 2023. Take care. We'll see you next time.